Hello everybody, this is Chris and this is the album commentary for the Deadbolt soundtrack. Several of you have asked me to do this, and I'm really happy to talk about the music of Deadbolt. Just like I did with Risk of Rain, this one is fully improvised. I don't have anything planned in front of me, nothing is scripted, so you have to bear with me. I hope it doesn't get off the rails, but the album is about 80 minutes long, so you should expect some nonsense here and there. So let's begin. This is the first track. It's called Now I Am Become Death. I would say it's an apt title, considering the nature of the game and what happens in it. If you're not familiar with the game, you play a Reaper that goes out and kills undead. Some people have asked me about the title, especially regarding the grammatical correctness of it. If you're not familiar with the code, it's by Robert Oppenheimer. He was part of the Manhattan Project, and when they tested out the first atom bomb, that's what he said. That's half of the code actually. The full one is, now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. And just after the first keyboard solo, here's the first guitar solo of the game. I was very lucky this time around doing Deadbolt because I had the privilege of bringing along a couple of friends of mine to work with me on the album. Christos Spirakis plays all the guitars and Thanasi Mustogiannis plays the drums wherever there are acoustic drums in the album. Both of them I know since I was about 15 or so. And we have played together. We grew up together, but we've also played in a lot of different bands, many different styles of music. And they are both wonderful musicians, and I was very happy to bring them along. And actually, even though I could find other musicians if I wanted to, I would not really consider it. If I didn't have the opportunity to work with those two specific people, I would probably just do it all on my own, just like I did with Risk of Rain. Here's another keyboard solo. I'm particularly proud for the sound in this one, in this track, I mean, the lead keyboard in this track. I like how expressive it turned out. I've been asked about my leads, the sound design on them, and I would probably do some video down the line showing a few of them maybe, and explaining how the sound is made. But usually what I do is I approach them in a bit of a guitaristic way. I first start with a simple maybe sine wave or square wave or something like that on a synth. And after I tweak the sound to bring it into how I like it, maybe some chorus, maybe some unisons, and the amount of portamento or not, that stuff that you will do on the synth. Then I will go on the track and add some guitar effects like overdrive or distortion, and some wah pedals and stuff like that that will add a little bit of expression to the sound. By the way, that keyboard solo is not part of the track as you hear it in the game. I've made a different version for the album in which you probably didn't notice now because I was talking over it, but if you have heard the track, you might notice that the solo kind of lingers on while the music fades away, and to me that sort of symbolizes the moment that the Reaper becomes the Reaper and accepts his mission and goes out into the night to do all his killing. So this is the second track of the album. It's called Blood on the Dance Floor. It was used in the trailer of the game. This is a slightly different version. I've added a few elements in the music and it's a quite different mix. And what you've just heard is the Reaper theme. This is the theme that you can hear in every track of the game. And it's a good opportunity for me to speak about how it came up and how I use the theme while composing, or rather designing, the soundtrack. I don't know how other composers do it. Some probably like to come up with the theme first and then go into writing the music, but what I usually do, especially in cases like that where the pieces of music are not strictly narrative, they're just, parts of a level and they're not telling a story throughout. What I do is I start writing pieces to pinpoint the sound of the game, or like the instrumentation and what kind of atmosphere each piece will give out, and the whole soundtrack in total will give out. And at some point in some of the tracks, the theme will just pop up and I will say, okay, this is the theme that I like, and that is flexible enough and good enough to be the main theme of the album. And then I will go back into tracks that are previously composed and I will insert that theme into them. Sometimes it's light surgery, where I will, add some layer that will incorporate the theme or something like that. But other times it's quite destructive. I mean, there might be a total rearrangement of the piece to incorporate the theme in it. So here it is, let's listen to it. Actually, in this case, if you pay close attention, you will hear that both of the voices here, the counterpoint between the two voices, like the bum 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 bum, both of these voices are doing variations of the theme. So it's actually just one single unit of music here that is being played against each other. This track is used in the vampire levels, and if you have played the game, you know that the game is divided in 3 tiers, and each tier has different types of enemies. So the first one is zombies, second one is vampires, and third one is the skeletons. And one discussion that we had with Duncan and Paul early on was that each of the gangs will have their own style, and it will be, the type of music that fits the setting of the gangs. So the zombies have this music that is more urban, inspired by hip-hop and stuff like that, funky. And the vampires, being creatures of the night, of course, they are nightclub dwellers. So we did all the electronic, the EDM music, if you will. And the more rockish stuff will go to the skeleton crew. Listen for the theme here. That's a good example of what I was talking about before, about a piece changing to incorporate the theme, because the original riff for this piece was something entirely different, and once I had my theme coming from the previous track, Blood on the Dance Floor, which I think was 5th or 6th track into the composing process. Then I went back into this one, which is, by the way, called This Pirate Is No More, and I completely changed the main riff to be the theme of the game. Here's a good example of something that I like to do with my music, which is incorporate a bit more complicated rhythms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is on 7, and although it gets a little bit even more complicated because the guitars are not playing on a strict 7, they're playing on a polyrhythm against the drums and the bass, and then the drums go into this sort of 6+ type of beat. It's a little bit complicated to explain it here in words while listening to it, but if you go to the track and pay close attention to it, you will see that it's a bit of clashing rhythms that meet each other after, X number of bars. Another example of toying around with rhythm here is that when the beat that would normally be the last beat of a bar, as you expected, becomes the first beat of the next bar, while the previous bar is shortened by 1 beat. I guess if you're not a trained musician, this might seem like a bit of mumbo-jumbo. Just take my word for it that it's a rhythmic construction that is just a little bit out of the norm. This track is a very good example of why I wanted to bring Thanasi to play the drums, because he's a drummer that is very well versed into this complex rhythmic playing and has very good ideas when it comes to it. The way we worked with him is because he's actually in LA and I'm in Greece. So what I would do is prepare demos of the pieces and send them to him via Dropbox. And then he would go into the studio with Nikolas Pharmakalidis, which is the person that engineered the drums. And they would record and would send it back to me in a multi-track. And then I would mix it here in my sessions. But the thing is that I would let Thanasi have a lot of freedom. I mean, I would give him some points in the track where I was a bit more strict about what he should do, because we needed to have, some anchors drum-wise. But other than that, I would tell him, bring your own input to it. I want this to be collaborative, and he did. And This Pirate Is No More is a very nice showcase of that. As well, of course, with Reaped by Death, but we'll get to that later with the drum solo and all. And by the way, the title This Pirate Is No More is a reference to the Monty Python sketch. And now we're listening to Undead Man Walking. The interesting thing about this piece is that when I sent it to Duncan, I think that was the fourth piece I composed, fourth or fifth, somewhere there, and we were still not 100% sure about the sound of the game. But when I sent him this piece, he said, okay, now I know the sound of Deadbolt. This is the piece that has this sort of stealth feeling, this planning in the shadows kind of sound. Interestingly enough, the piece originally was just this part, which is on a 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now the part that comes here was added later after I came up with the theme.